Good evening, everyone. Welcome this evening to the Town Council meeting for January the 27th, 2020. We want to welcome everyone that's here tonight. We have a few presentations. It's going to be an interesting night. And with that, would you please call the roll?
Valerie DiPaolo. Here. William Diedzik. Tom Lombardi.
Here.
James Morelli. Christopher Palmieri.
Here. Christopher
Poulos.
Here.
Paul Chaplinsky.
Here.
Michael Del Santo.
Present.
Victoria Triano.
Here. I just wanted to let Mr. Morelli is away on business, and Mr. Diedzik has a family situation and could not be with us this evening. So, can we stand for the prayer?
Heavenly Father, tonight we pray for direction and courage. We need your help to define our path and courage to walk it. We ask your continued blessing upon Southington and her people. Amen.
Amen. Let's all stand. We have troop number 42 from St. Paul's Church this evening, and they will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could I have another agenda, please? For some reason, mine is the prior agenda. Thank you so much.
The original.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion for the minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you. And right now I'd like to recognize Southington Rotary is here. Yay! Mrs. Kenefick is all ready. Kate, would you come on down, please? And anyone else that you would like to, Bob's going to come down, Bob Brown, and could I have the members of the Rotary all please come on down,
right.
Please, stand together.
Wonderful.
They might get extra points, Vicki.
They might get extra points.
They might not have clean shirts on.
In full disclosure, I should be standing there, but I can't give
I
up
want
the
French
seat
fries.
right now. But
Right.
for those of you who don't know, Southington Rotary has made a wonderful challenge within our community. They have decided to help fund and establish a playscape at Memorial Park. The Rotary Playscape, and have been fundraising for over a year now, and will continue to fundraiser in the year to come. And tonight, Kate Sarignano is going to be sharing a little bit about Rotary, but also has a presentation for us. So, Kate, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the entire Rotary Club of Southington, first of all, we'd just like to say thank you for partnering with us on this incredible project. It seems like we were just up here last month, but it's been over a year already. And so for the past 15 months, the Rotary Club of Southington, as Chairwoman Triano said, has been fundraising. So we have been doing our hardest to sell French fries at the Apple Harvest Festival and to sell at our golf tournament and host our Mardi Gras evening. So tonight we're here to present our first payment to the town in the amount of $25,000. So we're very pleased to be able to kick off the project. We know a lot of work has already been done in the fall, and I think our initial goal was to, have the project completed in summer of 2020, and now I can't believe it's already 2020. So, we're very excited. The Rotary Club of Southington is just one of many service organizations in Southington, but Rotary International is the largest service organization in the world. And here in town, we have just under 50 members. And so one of our main tenets is to give back to the community that we are a part of. And so when the Playscape project came about, we thought it was really the perfect fit. So once again, we're very excited. Would like to present the check to you guys, and hope that you can all come support our next fundraiser, which is our Mardi Gras evening. It happens at Tavern 42 on Tuesday, February 25th. And again, 100% of the net proceeds go right back to the town of Southington. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
The motto for Rotary is service above self, and let me tell you, they are in great service to the town of Southington. I'm very honored to be called a member, and wonderful to have you here. What we're going to do is I'd like to get a picture with Rotary and with all of us. So we're gonna, shall we invite them up here? Do you think is that the best way to handle it? Why don't you guys come on up?
Thank you.
Also, you know, I do want to mention that Mrs. Maselli was very helpful in establishing this process within the town as being vice chair last term, and I want to also recognize Mrs. Maselli. So. No, this is not going to work.
What do you want us to do?
Right here.
Stand right there. That's very good. Okay, get everybody in. Chris Lewis, come on in. Come on in, come on in.
Right next to you.
Okay, good. I'll say, thank you so much. Here we go. Smile, everybody.
You okay? How do I look, Brian?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Well, yeah. We'll talk about that.
Thank you.
I have some news for Rotary also, and that is that in preparing for tonight, I called Annette Turnquist, our engineer, our town engineer.
Superintendent of Highways and Parks.
Our superintendent of highways and parks. Annette, I am so sorry. I get it mixed up all the time. And Annette tells me that the playground things are here. They came in last week, did you say, or a while ago? A while ago, and so they're stored right now, but they're just waiting for the ground to thaw, and we can get some more site work done, although it's already begun, and we'll make that deadline, that 2020 deadline. Thank you again, Rotary. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very good. Our next presentation is, I would like to have Justine Corniello. Please come forward.
It's your job, you know. The lights. Let's go. Go. Go free rides, Taylor.
Alrighty. So first and foremost, thank you, Vicki and the council, for having me here today. I really do appreciate this opportunity to share the success of the Southington Health Outreach Project. I was encouraged by the Southington Behavioral Health stakeholder group to be here to talk about the success of the project. It's funded by the Barnes Trust, which is at Main Street Community Foundation. I am an integrative healthcare clinician at Wheeler Clinic. However, I formerly was the outreach coordinator of the Southington Health Outreach Project. So before I begin to talk about the success of the project, I want to talk a little bit about where it once was and how it became into where it is now. So there was a study in 2013 in September, a study of community health and healthcare needs was conducted in Southington to better understand the healthcare needs of the Southington residents and to identify areas where support from the Barnes Trust might address the gaps in services and promote the health and well-being of community members. It also shared the social determinants of health were explored, and data was collected through several means. Also, I know the survey I provided up there. If you want to take a look into it at your free time, I know you guys don't really have a lot of free time, but it talks about the results in the first 2 pages. History, the perceptions about the need for more preventative services in Southington varied. Some individuals indicated that there were more services needed, while others said there really wasn't more services needed. Residents faced barriers to accessing health care. Affordability of health care due to high co-pays, deductibles, premiums, and medication also was a major concern. So 2013, there was a grant opportunity through Main Street Community Foundation 2014, Wheeler proposed the Southington Health Outreach Initiative. In 2015, I started as a full-time outreach coordinator, and now at 2020, here we are with a 20-hour outreach coordinator. The goals of the project were to enhance access to mental health and substance abuse services, connect residents to services and navigate available resources, maintain and disseminate an up-to-date Southington Behavioral Health Resource Directory. Some of you may have that, and some of you in the audience may have it as well. This is our second edition. We had the opportunity to print 2 editions through funding with the Barnes Trust. The project also increased the mental health literacy through education on the signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use, to reduce the barriers, or to eliminate barriers to care, transportation, and stigma, and finances as well. Transportation was a huge concern in Southington. Through my time as outreach coordinator, many individuals needed transportation to detox and other services too. And also to administer and chair ongoing community stakeholder meetings. So we provide these more meetings quarterly. And it's a way for professionals in the community to connect. So year 1, primarily we're establishing relationships with key stakeholders in the town. We planned and convened behavioral health stakeholder meetings, the quarterly, and we developed and printed 5,000 hard copies of the resource directory, and then we began outreach at many different places throughout town, like the library, the Housing Authority, Bread for Life, the YMCA. Year 2, we collaborated with primary care, faith and community civic organizations. Outreach to several sites in Southington continued, and we provided mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid trainings at no cost to the community, and these were being held at the YMCA and open to the public as well as outside of Southington too. And then updated the Behavioral Health Resource Directory. Year 3, we exceeded overall annual goal by reaching a little over 2,700 residents in the first 8 months. And we attained 138 outreach activities through regular outreach. We continue to provide youth mental health first aid, adult mental health first aid, parent workshops, adolescent screening, brief intervention and referral treatment, and QPR trainings. Again, all these were free to the community. We continue to update the Behavioral Health Resource Directory, and then also continue the behavioral health stakeholder meetings. Year 4, we're getting to year 5, I promise. Improve access to medication-assisted treatment. So that's Suboxone and many other medications that can help individuals with substance use or addiction. Increase understanding and awareness of the opioid crisis through outreach trainings, information, dissemination through Narcan, and increase utilization of the prescription monitoring program that many providers utilize. And then again, reduce stigma. Year 5, we provided opioid trainings throughout the community. Again, these were free. Provided mental health first aid, the adolescent SBIRG and QPR trainings. Provided presentations to older adults on how to talk to your doctor about prescription opioids, which was a major concern for older adults. Outreach continued throughout Southington, and then our results showed from 2015 to 2019, we served over 7,000 residents. So our future goals, as I discussed earlier briefly, that we we will be hiring a 20-hour outreach coordinator for the town, is to plan, recruit speakers, and facilitate the quarterly stakeholder meetings. And we hope to continue that for it to be ongoing. Plan and schedule at least 1 community training per year, conduct regular outreach throughout town, make referrals, and eliminate any identified barriers to services. And again, the transportation is a huge piece in the town of Southington for individuals seeking mental health and substance use treatment. Updating the online behavioral health service directory, and participating and volunteering at community events such as Apple Harvest, Healthy Family Fun Fest, and other events throughout town to let people know that, hey, Southington Health Outreach Project is here to transport you if you need assistance to substance use or mental health services. And that's it. Any questions about the Southington Health Outreach Project? I have resources for anybody who's interested in the crowd. It's really important for us to serve the needs of the Southington community who experience mental health conditions and substance use or addiction. It's an area that, you know, Steps and Kelly, I'm sorry to pick out. Kelly does an awesome job. You really do, Kelly. And I think with the project, too, the transportation piece is so important. I know we have many individuals in the town, just in my experience, I can only speak on, you know, in their mid-40s that really need help, and we don't have that. We have the Calendar House, and they do a terrific job. They're so amazing, but there's an area of need for that population in their 40s, 30s, that don't have that family support for that transportation to addiction treatment. And then I also have resources. If you need to contact anybody about the Southington Health Outreach Project, you can contact Judith Stonger. She's our VP of Prevention, Wellness, and Recovery. So if you do know somebody that needs support, call her. We have so many resources at Wheeler. If that person doesn't want to go to Wheeler, that's fine. We'll connect them somewhere else. There's no concerns. We will transport them to Hartford. We'll transport them to New Britain, Waterbury. We're fortunate here in New England to have many services. It's just hard to navigate, and this is what the project does. It's difficult for many individuals when they're facing a crisis. What do I do first? Who do I call? And like I said, we're lucky here in New England to have so many resources, but again, it's hard to navigate, and that's what the project does.
Mm-hmm. Justine, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You know, from the very beginning, I've been trying to get into the stakeholders meetings. They're always scheduled at a time where I have an existing appointment every week. But I did go through the mental health training for teens and for adults, and it was very, very good. It was really a life-changing experience for me. I've seen the hard copy of the resources, but I've also seen this. These are resource guide for behavioral health. Tom was just saying, we'd like to make this available. Can we get more copies of this? Can we?
Of course, I can email it to you if you like.
That would be terrific. If we could email it, or even if we could have a connection to post it through our website, our town website. So sometimes people will go there and they won't know where to go to find something, but that would be a great help. And it's everybody's business. Mm-hmm. You know, when one person hurts, it's all of our concerns. I also want to thank Attorney DiPaolo because she said, you should get Justine. I go, oh, yeah, that would be great. So I wanted to acknowledge Val and all of that.
Thank you. Madam Chair, can I
of course
just say a couple words? And Justine, I do have one question, but I first want to mention that so I was on the Main Street Community Foundation board, and I was on the Barnes Committee for a number of years. And so when this first came, the proposal for the grant first came around, and the Barnes Committee committed monies to Wheeler to have this position. This position and everything that's been done really has been kudos to you, Justine. And I know she doesn't want to tout her own horn, but you've done just a tremendous job. The Barnes Committee every year, as money would be requested, it almost became a point where we wanted to continue to give money to this because it's just made such an impact in Southington, and for people to be able to get beyond that stigma and look for help. And I know I would see you at the library or at different places. So I know you've grown a lot with it, you've learned a lot, but tremendous what you've done with this position. So thank you for putting it on the agenda.
We certainly appreciate it. Thank
Just
you.
one question. There's another report being done, right? Another study? Do you?
I think there is, yes, but I'm not sure when that will be conducted.
I'll follow up with Main Street, because I believe, just before I left the board, I believe they were implementing another study, which would be great to see
where we are,
mm-hmm. And if things have changed, and if there's new issues.
Yeah, definitely.
So great job.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, it's important to have these resources. I find when I was at the library, many individuals will say, "Well, I don't need that." I said, well, maybe a friend, a neighbor might need it. You may not need it now, but maybe in the future. So put it in your junk drawer, you know, in the event that like you do need to support somebody, it's there. So.
It's great. Thank you, Justine.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions from someone?
Stop
Anybody?
now.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I'll leave that there.
Councilman Communications, and Mike, you had your hand up even before we started.
Yeah, I do. At a couple of events over the last couple of weeks, I was very fortunate, along with Councilperson DiPaolo and Mr. Lombardi and Ms. Triano, to go to the Elks dinner last Saturday night, where the Elks Club honored the veterans from the Elks Club. We gave a nice proclamation to them. It was a nice dinner that they had, a really great event, so we're very happy to be involved in that. That was January 18th. This past Thursday, we went to they had an event at the library where they went over the plans, and we saw a presentation for some of the ideas that they have. It was very well attended. A lot of folks from the community were there, which was great. Asked some really great questions. And this is important for the people of Southington because this is going to go to referendum, so it's important to everyone to really have some input with regards to our library coming up. And then lastly, I wanted to congratulate Mrs. Marie Secondo, who after over 20 years of service to the town of Southington with the library and the Historical Society and most recently with the Barnes Museum, she's retiring. So we wish her the best of luck and thank her very much for her years of service to our community. Personal friends with the Secondos, and they're just great people. They're, we all know Art, Southington true and true, and Marie is the same way. So we wish Marie the best of luck in her future endeavors outside of town service.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? Yeah, Chris.
Well, first of all, just to tag on with what Mike said, that the three of us were just talking about the library, how really it was well done, seeking out the public. The three of us were fortunate enough to attend as well. Just the way they had the public input, and there were two sessions. We all went to the evening session, but even the pre-public session that we had for elected officials, I think was very informative too, so we can all get information and hear firsthand from either a member of the library board, the director, or the architect. So I thought that was very well done. So just a shout out to them for that.
They had said the morning session was standing room only. It was packed for the morning session, which was great for 11 o'clock in the morning. It was great.
Great. A couple other things. First of all, Councilwoman DiPaolo and myself attended the 24th annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration, which was at the First Baptist Church of Southington last Sunday, and I'd just like to first of all thank the church for recognizing such an important event each year. The guest speaker was very incredible. He was the Honorable Richard A. Robinson, who's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Connecticut. Yeah, so he told his story. It was incredible to hear him, and of course I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our two students, Uptesh Singh from DiPaolo Middle School and Will Cumberledge from Kennedy Middle School, who were both recognized during the ceremony that day. So that was great. Two other quick things. Councilwoman DiPaolo, Councilman Poulos, and I attended the Board of Education meeting. They did pass on their budget, so that'll be now turned over to the Board of Finance to do the next step. So it is televised. It was at the last Thursday's Board of Education meeting, if anyone wants to look back at that meeting. And then finally, just to share, it's been a while, but I want to give some updates on what STEPS is up to in the community. So really making a great impact at the high school next week. They're doing a vaping education for the staff up there. It's the newest trend, unfortunately. So we're fortunate to have STEPS able to educate the educators on the signs related to vaping. And then our annual or biannual survey will be administered to students in grades 7, 9, and 11, and that will be the second week in February. So some good things going on, and just wanted to share that.
That's great. Very, very good. I know Kelly was here for the
I think
presentation.
she slipped out.
Yeah, she does a tremendous, her whole staff is wonderful. Anybody else? Yes, Val.
I just want to mention, just to follow up on the Martin Luther King celebration, one of the women for the committee mentioned that next year will be their 25th anniversary of their celebration. So it's going to be difficult to top Chief Justice Robinson. I'll tell you, he was phenomenal. So they're asking if people have thoughts and ideas for next year. They want to make it something really special. So if anyone has anything, just, you know, feel free to let me know, and I could pass it along to them.
It's really a wonderful event. Because they've changed it now to Sunday morning, it's hard for me to get there. I haven't been able to go since they did that. But it's a wonderful thing that the tradition continues, and that the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is continued to be spoken of. And I really want to thank Pastor Holt and the congregation at First Baptist, because they do a wonderful job.
They do.
Anybody else? Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to send a final thank you to all the participants and donors to the Polar Plunge that the YMCA held on Saturday, January 18th. It was another record year for the YMCA. It was a great event. Several of the firefighters and policemen and town staff, myself, Councilman Del Santo, Councilman Diedzik jumped with us, along with former Councilor Dr. Al Natale. But overall, just a great day for the community and for a great cause. So thank you to all the donors and everyone else involved with that great day.
Great. Is that it?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I just have one request, actually. If it's possible, if we can add real estate matters to our executive session this evening.
Oh, there's a request to add, motion to add an
I'll second that motion.
Okay, very good, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any?
Just discussion before.
Sure, of course.
Will there be any action
No,
outside of
that's a good
executive
point,
session?
Chris. I'm sorry, yeah. I don't believe there'll be any action
Okay.
after.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. All right, reports of special committees, self-insurance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Poulos and I we met as part of the Self-Insurance Committee on Wednesday, January 15th. It was a relatively brief meeting. We did go over the year-to-date budget number, and through, let's see what month, this is the numbers through December, we are $36,000 over budget. And if you remember, through November, it was a little bit more over budget. So things are looking relatively good on the self-insurance fund. The fund balance is $7.2 million. So normal operating procedures in terms of the budget. The other thing of note was that we had Anthem in, our plan administrator, and there were some comments in room areas for improvement where, from a customer service perspective, that town staff made the self-insurance committee aware of. So we had them in, and there's a clear path for certain areas of improvement. So I think town staff and the committee left that meeting feeling pretty good about it. And also, I think it's important to point out in the Board of Finance minutes that we're reviewing this evening, there was a question posed about the wellness program for the town, and happy to announce that the Anthem administrators of our healthcare for the town will be increasing the wellness program from $25,000 to $50,000. So it does seem to be a trend in the industry that these companies are investing more in preventative health measures for the town. So that was good. But we will meet again in February, and we'll report back. So
Very good.
that's all I had. Councilman Poulos, I think, is there anything
Very
else?
thorough report, Mr. Lombardi.
Thank you. I try to keep up with your reports, so you get next month, right?
Okay, I got you.
Thank you so much. Economic strike.
Yes, we met on January 16th for our first Economic Strike Committee meeting. Very excited to reconvene. Just for purposes of explaining what we do, Lou Perillo requested just a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting to welcome the committee and stated that the purpose of the strike committee was to disseminate information, to vet issues, and to provide potential business development opportunities, and with a quick, low-cost initial response. The committee is to react to bipartisan in a bipartisan manner with the town's best interests development in mind, and to take information back to us, the body of the council, and the finance board, so there are no surprises. So we had kind of a small agenda, and we decided in the meeting that we were going to meet as needed. But for the first, we're going to meet again in February, so that agenda will be coming out in the next week or so. We're going to meet at the end of February because Lou had some great ideas, and he asked for some feedback from some of the ideas that he had. But basically, the large thing was marketing. Are we doing enough to market Southington? We have some great opportunities in the town. We have a ski area that brings in 90,000 visitors a year. Lake Compounds that brings in 700,000 visitors a year. We have lots of hotels if people want to come and stay for more than one day, which is good. It's, hotels pay considerable taxes throughout the year. Folks eat at our restaurants, they shop at our stores, they fuel up their cars, and they use our gas stations. And so Lou is constantly racking his brain to see what we can do more to promote Southington. So he had some really great ideas, and he shared them with us. So we were going to think about some of these ideas and give him some feedback at our next meeting in February. Lou was asking for a slight increase in his budget to do some of these things, so that kind of always raises some eyebrows. But I think it's what he's asking for is not going to be over the top, and I think I think there's going to be some support from the strike committee to give that increase. But obviously, it's always up to the Board of Finance and the Town Council to do so. And ideas of signage and ideas of doing what we can to promote Southington. He did say, which is interesting, that, come Halloween time, Southington has 3 different events for Halloween. And one of them is ranked nationally. The Halloween haunt that they do at Crystal Bees is ranked nationally. Yeah, it's like in the top 10 in the country for what they do. And I happened to be there last year around October, around Halloween, and I couldn't believe it was like a movie set. It was incredible what they do with the makeup. So he has some really good ideas. So we're going to meet again in February to give him some feedback on some of the ideas that he had, and we'll report back out. And after that, we'll just meet as needed. Chris, I don't know if I missed anything. I know Chris was there.
No, because you mentioned the budget. I mean, the one thing about Lou's department, yes, it's an investment and it's asking for more money, but it has the potential to return money back to the town and ultimately save us more money. So it is an investment, but again, I think it will come back.
And I think some of those ideas are pretty solid. So we'll discuss those more at length. And we did have a short executive session meeting. Obviously, we can't talk about that, but more to report going forward.
That's great.
Any questions from the council with regards to that? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. The next item we have is the Ordinance Committee on here. Mr. Dietzick is not with us this evening. Does anyone else have a report?
Madam Chairman, make a suggestion the town attorney handle it?
Yeah, that would be great. If you could, Attorney Taylor, if you could get us up to speed.
Sure, if you don't mind. I was going to speak to it a little bit in my town attorney report, but we'll touch on as much as we can here. So we're going to be introducing a Don't Block the Box ordinance. This is basically an ordinance that prohibits motor vehicles from stopping in a designated intersection and blocking the passage of other vehicles. This is both to keep the flow of traffic going well as a safety concern to get emergency vehicles through there. If anybody's ever been in a situation where you see the lights were ready to turn yellow and there's cars in front of you and there's no way to get through there, or the light's about to turn green and there's cars already in the intersection, we want to make sure in these designated areas that are high traffic that this doesn't happen, and that if anybody is caught doing this, that it's going to be an infraction.
Very good. And so you'll be looking to have to call a meeting, or a request to call a meeting? Is that what it is?
Sure, if I could just interrupt here for a second.
Sure.
Because there's a specific property in mind that this is very important to, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, myself, as well as the owners of the property, we would like to see if you'd schedule this for a public hearing for your next meeting, so that the ordinance would be in effect prior to the commercial business being open, because it's vital. It's on Spring Street, and you understand how Spring Street could be, and they're very concerned about the fact that they can't get into their brand-new opening restaurant in the current situations that we have there, especially on Fridays and Saturdays. So we're hoping that the ordinance gets put in place. So I'd ask for that one, and I've already spoken to the town attorney, that for one instance, we bypass the ordinance committee and schedule for a public hearing on behalf of the whole board.
But will the ordinance committee have an opportunity to meet prior and give a recommendation prior to that hearing?
My suggestion would be is that Chairman Dietzick can schedule a meeting between now and your next meeting.
Well, I would hope that they would be able to have enough time.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Well, comment. I mean, I think that I'm pretty sure that given the I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think the simplicity of the ordinance, it seems like Councilman Dietzig would probably be able to accommodate getting that done. I'm sure
Good.
he can be in regular communication with the committee on that. I do have a question, though, a consideration for just a slight adaptation of what was given to us in the language of the ordinance, because although I know we're looking at a specific area for this, I recognize that there may be a couple more. However, the roadways may be state-owned. And so if when I read the a couple sections, I see that in the first paragraph it says, it goes on K&L, second line, K&L of this section on posted schedule, town property or a town roadway. In there, I was wondering if you needed to put in there as indicated in section sub. It just doesn't, it seems like a grammatical error. That's one. The one about the state roadway is section M. It says, on a town roadway in which the local traffic authority has authorized and prohibited, so on and so forth. And my recommendation would be to simply say, on a town roadway or state roadway within Southington in which the local or state traffic authority has authorized and prohibited the blocking. So that we incorporate both and just, it seems like a very simple change to the grammar. And maybe I could just point it to you.
Sure, Mr. Chaplinsky. Just the concern is that if it is a state roadway, that's something that, you know, we can review if it happens to be in that area, but that's something that's going to be under the state control. We'd have to make a recommendation up to them, have them approve it, and then send it back down. So that's, I don't think we can put that into our ordinance, but I will look into that.
Yeah, okay, so alternatively, it could be step one, we get this one on the books, and, you know, to ensure that we're hitting the time frame. And then if it makes sense, maybe in parallel, looking at the, if it can't be done in time to have the state look at it and give us comment, then maybe we can do it as a revision B for a meeting in the future.
Well, I think we have to take it on obviously a case-to-case basis based on what, you know, what areas, if we feel the police department, everybody reviews it.
Yeah, like I'll get,
it's necessary. But I can talk to Councilman Dietzig about that, and we can work on it.
Yeah, my comment really is just to ensure that we're looking into the future and not just, you know, doing an ordinance for this, for the case of just one property, which I agree that we need to do it for this section. I just think that there may be other sections of town that may have to do this. I'm supportive of taking a stepwise approach.
I think there's some others that are in consideration right now.
I'll give you an example. West Pines Drive is just notorious for people blocking that area, and we took a no left turn out of there. The town did a year or so ago. However, you know, people still block going south on West Street at the intersection of West Street and Spring Street. As they're going south, they block West Pines Drive. So it means that somebody who's coming down the road can't turn left down into West Pines Drive, and they're stopping traffic on West Street, and that causes, you know, real traffic concerns. In the past, when we did have traffic coming out of West Pines Drive, they would block the intersection and people couldn't come out of West Pines Drive. So we've alleviated half the problem by stopping the traffic coming out. So I don't want to hold this one up, but certainly I'd like us to just consider it for the future.
No, I'm sure there's many other streets or roadways that we'll be looking into, but
All
I
right,
appreciate
thanks.
it.
Any other questions on this?
Just a comment. I just want to thank the manager too. I know we've talked about this. In fact, I know we've talked about it at the council level too, because the intersection in question at Spring Street and Queen Street certainly could use an improvement. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, this would add a right turn lane in that intersection, which
Well, the ordinance doesn't.
no, but
No,
this,
this-
but
If I may, obviously, Chris and I discussed this, and we approved it when he was chair. The property owner is not charging us any money to give us the rights to put a right turning lane in there. So one of the things that the property owner did ask for, which we thought was very reasonable, is what can we do so that the new business doesn't have his entranceway blocked all the time, especially on Friday nights and Saturdays, which is very big for restaurants. So this, we came up with this, and then speaking with Chief Daly, we realized that we couldn't just put a block. We could put signs up, but we can't have it enforced unless you pass a local ordinance called the block ordinance, and that's why this is there. So to answer the question, yes, specifically it's for this project, but the other part is yes, there's other areas of town, and this will fall under the jurisdiction of anything the traffic authority, and in Southington, that's the chief, he feels is necessary. So, and I agreed, Jeremy, state roads are a little bit more difficult, but certainly there's plenty of areas on town roads that this could be looked at.
Agree.
and then just to follow up with that, because it's the area we're talking about is an intersection of a state road and a town road, this still would fall in line
Box
with?
will be on the town road.
Okay,
Box will be on Spring Street
okay,
itself.
great.
Madam Chair. Sure. Thank you, Councilman Palmieri, for pointing it out. But I think we should just the public might be confused. The property we're talking about is the former Bertucci's building and the new Plan B building. So
Right.
I think there was specific property was mentioned. So let's just put it out there. That's the area that we're talking about. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for the discussion on that. Let's go right into town manager's report.
I think
Mr. Chair?
there is one more thing.
There's
under
just
ordinance.
one more that I could cover here instead of covering in my
Okay.
town attorney report. We're in the very beginning stages, but we are also looking at a sign license ordinance. Many other towns around the area have this. It's enacted in the state that you should really have a license and be certified to put up some of these signs in town. There's a lot of people that are putting them up that don't have a license that are going for permits, and it's an area of concern, especially with electrical lighted signs. You need to have a C7 license to do this, and I think we're seeing in town that this is going on, that people doing the work may not have these licenses. So that's something that could cause a public safety hazard, and so we're looking into that, and that's something that we are in the process of discussing.
Very good. Thank you. That's so that will also be discussed in the ordinance committee.
That's correct.
Very good. Anything else, Mr. Taylor? You all
No,
set?
that will be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item I have is the Board of Finance report. You will see it was a relatively normal meeting with two important things I want you to note. First is we had a presentation on our audit. And I know it seems like Derek Jeter or name your favorite Red Sox or your favorite Met, that we get these clean audits every year, and ever since all of you have been on the council, we get the awards every year. And those gentlemen make things look very easy when they play baseball, and Amelia makes everything looks easy to you guys, but it isn't easy. What she does every year and her staff does every year is not easy. We get clean letters every year, we get awards every year. We'll be getting another one this year. So let me just say that, like I said, the Board of Finance, these things don't happen by accident. And Amelia and her staff obviously deserve a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely.
The second item I have is the Blatchley demo. Eventually, obviously, once the gravity line is in, we're going to demo the pump station, which technically is not being used as a pump station. And the Board of Finance agreed to use the sewer fund, contingency fund, to pay for that. We can't do that, obviously, until after the gravity line is in and functioning.
Right, of course, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I do have a
Anybody?
question,
Yeah,
Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you to the town manager. I just wanted to point out that I think a brief clarification on page 6 of the wellness program. I think there was a little bit of a typo. So when it comes for a motion, I'll just say motion to approve with the recommendation from the town manager to correct the wording. And if you could just briefly explain
the question was
typo.
asked, the important parts of the wellness program. The biggest financial part of the wellness program, we can clarify the narrative in there. These aren't verbatim, obviously,
Right.
but the biggest financial part of the wellness program is that we give the carrot and stick, like most towns do, that if you do a physical every year yourself, on anybody on the insurance plan, you get a couple of percentages off your premium share. Most people who work for the town of Southington, whether they be BOE or town employees, pay anywhere between 20 and 25% of their insurance, called a premium share, their share of it. If they get their physicals, they get a 2-point reduction. If they don't get their physicals or don't have anybody, if one person on their insurance plan doesn't get their physicals, they get a 2-point bump upward. So anybody who will tell you that the most important thing you can do every year, besides go to your dentist, I'm told, but is having your physical. So in this particular case, that's something that's very successful. I wish I can say that everyone gets it, but they don't. And as the vice chair mentioned, Anthem has bumped up the number they gave us for the wellness programs we run. And just so you know, the 3 programs we're running this year is a Biggest Loser, that the Board of Ed and the town employees are competing against each other. And we're doing, I think, one Zumba class and one yoga class. I wish I can say that I'm part of both of those classes. I'm in neither one of those classes. So anyway, so to answer the vice chair, that's the clarification.
Yeah, and just for the council, the sentence that threw me a little off is it said, Mr. Shota said the most important is the financial wellness program. And I think the minutes should have said the most important is the annual physical program. It was just a simple word that made it read a little awkward. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
have one comment on the
Sure.
town manager's report. I did receive a call from a resident in the area, the Blatchley pump, and I just wanted to say thanks for the work again. It was a very positive reach out, which was really nice to hear, that the work that's being done is very methodical. They were appreciative that we left some of the hardwood trees that we were able to add on to preserve the ones above and beyond the ones we already had planned. So just wanted to give the feedback there that the work that's being done on site was really good so far. So thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick, on page 5, at the top of the page, should that be $8,400?
What's the sentence?
It's with the recycling.
Page 5.
Talked about the anticipated numbers, approximately 17,000 in the budget to hold it there. It says it was 84,000 last year that we paid to another community for people that brought their recycling.
The 8,400, yeah.
Okay,
No,
just-
for the household hazardous waste?
Right.
Yeah, it was 8,400, 84,000.
Not 84,000, okay.
Thank you. At least the check wasn't 84,000.
Thank you, everybody. We all set? Thank you, Mark.
Madam Chair, the next item I have is the energy consultant report. I'd like, first of all, Superintendent Turnquist to, who's the administrative point person on energy, to do the introductions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Annette Turnquist. I'm the superintendent of the Highway Parks Department, and we have Alberio Energy here tonight. We had a presentation a few months ago to the previous council. Specifically, Rudy was here from Alberio Energy. He has moved on from the company, and Matt Wheatley has taken his place. He's here tonight. I have given Matt a whole lot of information in a very short amount of time, but he has digested it very well. He's done an excellent job putting this presentation together, and he's going to let you know what the town has done, where we currently are, and where we go in the future. Well, Matt?
That's great.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Let me just put this into presentation mode.
Dangerous. See a white van.
As Annette said, my name is Matt Wheatley. I'm from Alberio Energy. You would have recognized my name as one of the respondents. So I'm not new to Alberio or your account, but I'll be the new face of it. Now Rudy has moved on. As Annette said, my goal really is to make sure that I can give you a sense of, a quick look back on some of the key items that the town has.
Excuse me,
already
Matt,
accomplished.
I'm so sorry. Matt, is your microphone on?
You gotta get
Just
right
pull it
on
closer.
it. Yeah, you gotta
Yeah,
get
you're
right
real
on it.
close. Is that better?
Much better.
Thank you for letting me know. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
So the goal really is to give you guys a look back in terms of what the town has already accomplished, and then signpost some of the things that can be done. I'm just going to set my timer so I don't talk for too long. One of the key things, my goal here is to kind of give you guys a sense of, make this accessible, but also kind of specific. So I've tried to include numbers. In terms of background, I'm a chartered accountant that spent around 15 years in energy, so I love numbers. Hence the reason I have to set my stopwatch, otherwise I will carry on talking about this for a long time. I'm going to skip over Alberio Energy introduction because I'd rather talk about the town. The only thing I will say is we have about 1,000 employees that all we do is energy, and I'm part of the executive team that helps run the U.S. national business. In terms of the town, the way that we look at the accounts is you have the school board, the town, and the water department that together use around kind of 14 to 15 million kilowatt hours a year. First reference point I provide would be the average U.S. house uses about 11,000 kWh a year, just to give you that kind of proportional sense. In terms of gas usage, you can see it up here in therms. So you've got around, call it, anywhere from about 510,000 therms a year. Again, to give you just a quick sense, the average American household, if they do have gas, uses far less than 1,000. So just again, just to give you those contextual numbers. In terms of what the town has already accomplished, it's very impressive. We're going to walk very quickly through 3 topics that I'd consider complete, but just for that context, and then there's a handful of topics that have work ongoing or will be scheduled next. So the first thing is some efficiency work that's been going on. This is a long-standing energy performance contract. So this is where a number of energy conservation measures, or ECM is the acronym you'll see on the left-hand side, actions have been undertaken. So this is where you've had mechanical or physical or electrical engineers come in the building and make changes to reduce the usage. And these include things like lighting or switch gear and transformers and things like that. In terms of what this has touched, it touched from memory around 80-odd properties. So it was quite a reach, and it was a $13 million contract that is actually performing really rather well. You've already saved around 4.5 million kilowatt hours a year. So as you can recall from the prior slide, that's about a third reduction, which is very impressive and aggressive. And that means that you're saving, have saved already in the first 3 years of audited performance, $3 million. And so this is a very well-structured agreement that the town created. There is a loan provider to this at a competitive rate of around 3%, so you're in a kind of cash neutral position. You had these upgrades and improvements to your facilities to aggressively reduce your usage. It was paid for by that third party against a loan, and the savings are outweighing your loan payments. So far this has performed very well, and it's been a good foundation for your work so far. In terms of the second step, the town already has 1.5 megawatts of solar deployed, around the Board of Education properties, including the schools listed up here. Again, you guys should be very proud of this, and this isn't just empty words. To give you some context, the state of Connecticut produces, well, it has a mandate to have about 20+% of its electric to come from renewable sources. However, the state gets most of that shipped in from neighboring states, and so only produces, from memory, about 8% of its electric from renewable sources. The town is well ahead of that, as you can already see, given, just since, I will, to an earlier question, I will make sure I do a look back more holistically, but these sites produced about 1.5 million kilowatt hours a year. And so every kilowatt hour that these produce, you're avoiding cost in the grid that you would have otherwise purchased, both the supply and the delivery cost. But just as importantly, you guys are actually saving a huge amount of CO2 emissions. I made a calculation here based on the government EPA guidelines that you're saving around, you've already saved about 850 metric tons just in the look back we did from May through November. And so it's very impressive, the equivalent of taking over 2 million cars off the road. And so absolutely avoided cost is critical. As a township, you want to be responsible from a dollars perspective, but obviously the community benefit of not having emissions generating electric is actually rather key. So again, well done on what you've done there. In terms of other sustainability items, there's you guys also have, and I looked into this, it's the only one in the state that produces electric. It's what's called an anaerobic digestion facility, which is where you take 40,000 tons of food and other bio-waste a year, and through a kind of process that includes heat reclamation, turn that into electricity. And this produces a significant amount of electric, 5.5 million kilowatt hours in this one site. And it's not physically connected to where your consumption is made. Therefore, it's owned by a third party that wheels it through a grid in something that's called a virtual net meter. So in other words, situated in the same location but not in the same meters, it produces all of this electric, goes to the grid, and they give you, in effect, what's called a credit, which is a financial benefit. Again, when we look at this, the dollars aside, and we're still going through an economic look back, but again, environmentally, looking at the EPA guidelines, this plant saves probably around 3,000 to 4,000 US tons a year of CO2 equivalents. So this is, again, very impressive. And the reason those numbers are so strong is, methane has a a heating impact that's 86 times as aggressive as CO2. And given how much kind of methane is avoided going into the environment, turning this many tons of food waste into electric, it's a huge benefit. So, from a financial perspective, we're still going to look back, but it seems to be very much within the realms of, market prices for electric. But just as important, again, is those, removal of emissions from the local area. Any questions on that? I saw a couple of eyebrows, so I thought I'd pause. Yes?
Hi, I have a question. It actually wasn't on this one. It was on page 4.
Yep.
Sorry I didn't stop you then. I wasn't sure if I should
This one here?
stop. Yeah. So if I understand this correct, the blue columns represent the total electrical usage for the town. All 3 branches, right?
Correct.
It seems to me that there's an increasing trend in the usage from the beginning of this year to the end. And to me, it doesn't look cyclical. It looks to me like, maybe there's something coming, more demand coming on board or something, but it definitely seems like a trend to using more electricity. Now, I know we're getting some back from the solar panels, but to me, it looks like that's something we should be looking at.
Yeah, well, it's a very...
I know it's only a 12-month, and I know it'll repeat.
Exactly.
But when I look at it, it still looks a little fishy to me.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. Yeah, happy to do a kind of prior year period, and you'll see that much more aggressively if we were to kind of show 2016, 17, 18, 19, which we're happy to provide. A couple of things on that. One is, to your point, the use of energy is very seasonal in nature, and so there is always going to be a cycle. And the cycle of the water department looks very different than the schools, as a good example. And so we've got to kind of take into account, you're going to expect some seasonal behavior, but I'll happily, for the next report, come back and I'll show you what that looks like on a year by year by year basis to let you see that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know when the next report is, but it certainly doesn't have to wait until then. If you have it and you can send it in through the town manager, that'd be great.
Yeah, happy to.
Or through Annette. I'm not sure what the preferred avenue is. I'm sure the follow-up for us is what's next, right? So this, for me, would just be one of those questions as to whether that's something we should be looking at.
Great. Thank you for that. Yep. Any other questions?
Just if I can follow up with what Paul was saying. So, and I know, Mark, you and I talked about this. So the high school, we just had a partial roof replacement. So, and Vicki and I served actually on that building committee. We had talked about adding solar to that. Now, I know there's more to come for the high school because that was only one portion of the building that had the roof replaced. So I guess my question is it more efficient to maybe get on board the portion of the roof that was replaced and get some panels going there, and then maybe as time goes on and more sections of the roof are replaced, add on to that, or wait and do it all at once? I mean, what would you suggest is the best option?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What I'd say is it's always worth scoping and costing these things out. When it comes to a solar project, your costs are really kind of equipment and labor. The one thing we'd want to check in terms of the equipment perspective is the size of the inverter. So it's pretty key that obviously they'll want to minimize the size of the inverter equipment available to the panels. And if we're too open with any kind of provider and say, well, we might double the panels, then they'll double the size of the inverter. So I think knowing that that's a big part of driving the cost, we'd want to sense check, and I think a provider would come back in. But in terms of if you've had a roof and it's obviously new and therefore can take the load-bearing requirements, at least scoping it out and getting a cost in place, it's an exercise that's worth doing.
So with that, with what you just said, so potentially if we buy the larger inverter, say for the high school, only use it half capacity now because only a portion of the roof was replaced, knowing that in the future, the council's aware, we know that the roof is going to have to be repaired further.
Right.
Then we've already got that inverter, we've already made that initial investment.
Because I think we were both disappointed that it wasn't included in the construction.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Mark, what our next steps are you know, as far as looking
Actually,
into-
this actually came up when the three of us met on what the best angle is, so I know he's already working on that.
Okay.
He'll be discussing it with Mr. Romano. But per the capital plan, that wouldn't be until fiscal '22, which is November '21. So he has that information that we gave him, and I know that we only met last week on those particular issues, so I know he's been working on that part of it.
Okay.
So once we talk to Mr. Romano, I know also the issue was, as you're all aware, is that there's a reimbursement from the state that we want to look at too. So that's important. So that's all part of it. So I know he's working on that.
Okay.
Great point.
If I may add to the comment, I would make a recommendation that our energy consultant be brought into any conversations on new buildings or renovations, and also the option to lease versus buy should also be considered, because currently we don't own any of our solar systems. We lease, so there's a $0 capital expenditure, and we save money from the day that the third party turns it on.
Either you were at the meeting or you taped our meeting. That's exactly what we discussed at the meeting also.
And then I just have one further comment, Matt. Thank you so much for the presentation so far. It's been great. I hate to interrupt but on page 7 that we discussed, where it talks about the different solar sites and the avoided cost, one other key component that I think would be helpful to the council and the residents is to do like an average of produced electricity versus utilized. So we can say this solar system is producing X amount percentage of the electrical needs of the building. And I know it fluctuates month to month, but with the previous energy provider, I was able to calculate that for the 2 of the schools. And I know that back in 2016, you know, South End, the solar system produced 92% of the electrical demand of the building, and Plantsville was at like 62%. So I think obviously everyone likes to look at the financial cost avoidance, but I think the energy production and use is also a key component. So
It's great feedback. Yep.
Thank you.
It's a clear action. Thank you for that.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, of course.
Councilman Lombardi just mentioned something, and I'm afraid maybe we nodded our heads and just kept going forward. But if we agree as a town that solar is a way for us, and it seems to be paying dividends, I think we need to be more diligent about our buildings and making sure that they're on our buildings, right? We just heard that Southington High School didn't get done. The Calendar House is done by now, right? But we also have we have a library that's in discussion right now for a proposal. Like, there should be no proposal on a library without solar panels.
I agree.
Any new structure that we update a roof on, it should always so do we have a policy? I want to know if, like, do we need to put something in writing that says, we must consider solar panels for each one?
I'm sure the administrative liaison to the energy will tell you that every town building where a roof is new, it doesn't have to be a new building, where a roof is new, we're exploring solar. We are not exploring solar, ground-mounted solar, but we're exploring solar on every roof, whether it be a new building or a new roof on an existing building. So that's been part of our program for probably 3 years now.
Oh, we didn't put one on the high school roof.
Well,
If I can,
that's a different issue. That wasn't, well, I'll leave it at that.
if I can intervene too, because and Vicki and I served on the building committee. We did bring it up.
We did.
We both were in full agreement. We brought it up, and I think Mark touched on it a little bit. It was a matter of state reimbursement, and it was a matter of the fact that the whole high school wasn't replaced, and it was going to be done in phases. So
Right.
that's the difference with that, Paul, versus like the Calendar House, which was totally renovated. I actually. I'm sure you saw the designs too, and looking at the schematics, some of the designs for the library look like solar panels. So I said, "Oh, are those solar panels?"
Right,
and
right.
and they're not.
They're not.
But I did speak to Christy about it, and that is part of the plan. Eventually,
Well, it's just like you don't necessarily make it part of the construction. If you're leasing them, then we do like the Calendar House. The Calendar House is built, and then we
and
lease.
then add it.
But we do need to make it part of the design, right? So they're showing concepts today with glass roofs all over, and that's probably not conducive for solar panels. So we would want to make sure that that is considered and factored
Well, I don't
into
think-
the design,
I
right?
haven't seen the design yet, so, of the building itself, so.
Yeah, the emails that was.
And one of
It
the
was very
things
rough,
that we
but-
had talked about with the high school was the fact that it would be very costly to go backwards now that the roof was on. But going forward, they would certainly be considered. So I think, you know, there's a difference between our practice and what our policy is. It's good that we have a practice of considering solar for every new building or every new roof that we put on. But do we feel strong enough to make it a policy? That's really kind of what you're saying, that it gets in writing and that it becomes policy. I think it's for a discussion, perhaps not for this evening, but
the council has to vote on every one of these things. Just like the council had to vote on we went to referendum on the roof for the high school. That went in front of the council and it's voted on at that point. At that point, we did not know about that issue. And I know when it was brought up to the committee by the director of operations at the time, for timing-wise, it wasn't approached. So in that particular case, yes, the council could certainly have a policy, but I'm telling you, every one of these things has to come in front of you anyway. We can't spend money the size of a roof without certainly coming to the council for that.
But this council has a passion for it. This council feels very strongly on both sides of the aisle that we need to reduce our carbon footprint and that we need to be responsible in all of this. And so I'm not sure, I can't speak for future councils, but this council feels very strongly about it. And so I'm saying at a future time, not tonight, these young men some of them have midterm exams tomorrow, so we have to keep them.
They don't hold enough for midterm exams.
But I do think that it would be great if we were able to talk in depth about it. And actually, are we ready to put it down in policy so that future councils, whether we're here or not, would still adhere, and so that the exception to the policy would be the exception, not the other way around, like it's brought to us and we just assume that they're going to go with it. So it's just something for future discussion. And so very good.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Matt? You have anything else?
Sure. Conscious of time, so I'm just going to signpost a couple more things. And it's great to hear the support for the policy and the guidance around kind of investigating solar is very consistent. Mark was in his briefings to me, and as was Annette, very key that not just obviously cost avoidance, but carbon avoidance was key. So very consistent with our briefing thus far. So thank you for that. In terms of other items, so just very broadly, as you're probably aware, when it comes to paying an electric bill, which none of us enjoy, you've got really two factors. It's the supply side, which is the generation per kilowatt hour, and you've got the delivery in terms of how much it costs for Eversource to maintain the pipes and wires.
Corruption.
That's typically around 50-50 of the cost. I'm just going to talk just about the supply side for now.
On a good day, it's 50-50.
On a good day, it's 50-50, and the way that the delivery is costed, it would be wonderful if it was very simple in a per kilowatt hour perspective, but it's not. And so, because of the way that the load is structured, and sometimes in a few of the months, some of the schools in particular, it's more like a 3-to-1 ratio in some of the months because of that. So yeah, absolutely. Anything that the schools or any other part of the town does to avoid the savings doesn't just displace that KWH point, to Councilman's point, it avoids the whole bill. But in terms of that supply price, what the board, the town, the school board, the water board, and the town have done is locked into a very good rate. Just to give you guys a perspective, if you hadn't locked into these rates of, call it 897 on average, right now the default rate the utility would sell your energy at is about 9.6. So you're saving minimum kind of 0.7 for every kilowatt hour that goes around. And more importantly, the process you've used gives you rate stability. The Eversource rate changes minimum every 3 months, but they, by practice, tend to change it every 6. And it doesn't give you any of that budget stability. Because you're locking this out under longer areas, there's been that budget stability. The additional benefit that Mark, Annette, and I have talked about is that the market is actually starting to really come down. I've given just a very high-level view of that in that right-hand graph. Because of one of the main elements of the charge is a term called capacity, which is effectively the state encouraging generators to exist. That is proportionately coming down, particularly since the nuclear deal was approved by the state in end of 18, early 19. And so actually now our suppliers are indicating that we might be able to kind of get a rate below around in and around 8 cents instead of 8.9. And so we're going to look at procurement around that, given the market is coming down, for any power that you consume from the grid. Now, obviously, we all hope for that to come down through either efficiency or displacement, but the balance of your best financially having, one, that practice you used previously to give yourself budget certainty, but frankly taking advantage of market timing. So that's next up. In terms of other items that we've talked about, and again, my watch is like shaking like a leaf, telling me to stop talking. So I will wrap this up. But three things we're looking at. One, Mark Annette and I are going to look through in terms of particularly lighting. Lighting saves a tremendous amount if you go from older fluorescent-driven technologies to new LED. It saves on heat, but mostly it saves on electric. So we're going to go back through and have a look at where hasn't been complete. The initial EPC that was performed by the town was a great investment and actually did replace a ton of the older T8 and T12 lights, but not all of them. Annette showed me some samples where firehouses, for example, still had a couple hundred fixtures left to go, and there could be great savings to drive out of that. One of the things that we'd like to look at is, and we just, Albireo just did this for a 26 building campus. We replaced 13,000 fixtures, and we had the energy provider pay for it, warranty it for 10 years, and fold it into a supply rate. Given that we're looking at a supply rate now, we'll, when we price the market, find out which of those suppliers would have an appetite to fund a capital availability, so the township doesn't have to commit to a capital amount. Again, we wouldn't ever kind of run a process to completion without bringing it back for the appropriate approval. But our next step is to kind of run through that process to say, which of these suppliers have, capital appetite, shall we say, to include a facility for on-bill finance. So we'll be running that next. And in terms of other items, just in the interest of time, one, the water board is already considering a Bloom fuel cell on site, and it's going through that kind of phase now. Again, economically, it does make strong sense because it gives you a 20-year partial fix on the energy. I say it's partial because you still have to buy the natural gas that goes into the Bloom cell, but it, all in, it should be a really strong savings. And although it's natural gas, and therefore you might think carbon, it's a non-combustion technology. So actually, the amount of carbon reduction from a fuel cell is surprisingly high. Something of this size that has been considered will save around about 400 US tons of CO2 a year. So although it's powered by a fossil fuel, don't think this is not environmentally friendly, because the technology is actually very, very sound. And then lastly, again, one of the things that Mark and Annette challenged me on was to say, what are other towns doing who are leading? The township is well ahead of the renewable percentage of others. What else is happening? And there's really kind of a next generation around bringing more generation assets locally and controlling them. If I think about Bridgeport, Connecticut, and New Britain, Connecticut, they both approved microgrids. The Bridgeport one's smaller, the New Britain one's actually $1 billion microgrid. And this is where they are hoping to go into what's called island mode, where they'll kind of almost shut the borders to the electric utility and only take it in emergency scenarios. And the primary production of the energy will be within the area. How do you get from here to there? Well, you have to have more assets in place in terms of generation, and the key one being battery storage. One of the reasons why, and I think, Councilman, your question was very intuitive around, well, what about the percentage of electricity produced? You can actually overproduce the amount of electric with more solar panels if you have somewhere to economically and physically store the energy and then use it when you would otherwise dissipate. And I've shown a graph on the left what that could look like, where you shift some of that excess production that you would make into periods you don't have. These are very expensive, complex systems that only work when you can stack up a bunch of economic incentives, federal, state, as well as energy market. So what Mark and I talked about was we can't commit that these are going to make economic sense, but we can commit to look at them to see if they make economic sense. And the candidate we thought would be good from an investigation perspective would be the new library. If it is constructed, given that that's going to be brand new switchgear, and plans that we can trust as accurate without sending an engineer around, it'll be really easy to kind of economically test the feasibility of that. So just, in the interest of time, whizzing through that, but really kind of, signposting, the things you've already done in terms of rate certainty and procurement, solar, and then the biomass plant have made a ton of sense. What next could make sense could be more rate procurement, bringing a facility in from one of those suppliers, and then looking at some of these new technologies that a couple of towns in Connecticut and elsewhere have done, but very much on the front edge of energy management. So I'll stop there because otherwise my watch is going to shake my hand off. But unless there's any questions, I'll thank you everyone for your time.
One question. Thank you again, Matt. Just very briefly, it's something that has never really come before the council, and I don't know if it's even possible, but do you have any municipal or commercial clients that utilize geothermal systems? I know there's a significant capital investment there, but is that something that's commercially viable, or is that only a residential system?
For geothermal?
Right.
Yes, there are a couple of specialist companies that do it. There's one called GI Energy that was actually recently acquired by Shell.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden it has more capital availability to do it. A lot of the projects they've done have been on a campus level, where you've got both a more constant thermal as well as electric need. The reality is it costs a lot of money just to find out whether or not it can pencil in terms of having the right geologists and engineers take a look. So I happily, on behalf of the town, I could reach out to some of the contacts we have to see roughly in this geography can they make sense. What we see as more common in university areas would be more traditional, either kind of biomass or cogeneration. So where you might have like a either a reciprocating engine or a turbine-driven CHP system that's going to kind of capture the heat for not just electric generation, but displace some thermal need around there. That tends to be a lot more common and a lot more economic. But we could certainly investigate those items.
Interesting.
Those also require highly skilled personnel to monitor those, keep them tuned. Those are not. They're really good, but from my experience, they oftentimes require highly skilled folks who are trained at programming and management of those co-generators.
Yeah. To
keep them up and running, efficient when they break. So we'd have to have. It's not somebody that would be standard usually on a staff. It's somebody who's trained in that area.
One would agree, and the way I'd phrase that would be to say, there's really there's a bit of a dividing line around size where you either do or don't need high pressure gas, and if you do need high pressure gas, that means you've got to have more people on site to monitor it. And I think Mark and Annette and I have briefly had this conversation. I think about CHP around, you're right, it needs that extra work. I tend to bundle the physical, the financial, and the commercial responsibilities in one place. So in other words, if you have a CHP provider that says, yes, I will guarantee to you contractually that this will be available 92% of the time, and they will take responsibility for maintenance, for monitoring, and your responsibility is effectively allowing them the space and the purchase. That can work well in terms of drawing a very clear red line around responsibility of others versus yours. If you were to kind of look at a capital perspective, not only are they highly capital intensive, but you take on some operational responsibilities. And most customers will say, I'm not in the business of running a power plant, I'm in the business of running a school or a university.
Okay. Those will be outsourced.
Thank you, Matt. My watch is now.
Sorry, yep.
Madam Chair, I do have one comment though.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's really important. I do think that we have an obligation to plan for our future here. And if, you said it a meeting or two ago that we are ambassadors and leaders in sustainability. And
sure.
Besides the library, I'm hoping it'll be LEED certified. I think the library would be a great, if we do redo it, it should be a showpiece for energy conservation and sustainable design. So, I would hope that we would incorporate all of the positive things into that. But I think we have a couple good ideas here about like what's next. I think it would behoove us to put say a 10-year plan together that outlines for us and for future councils, where do we want to be in 10 years? We know there's a bunch of things that we want to do. We can't do them all at once. I think we should put them all on paper and maybe, try to plan the years ahead so that we can see in our minds the things we might want to budget for, the things we might want to pass to the next councils, so that it doesn't get lost in the future. So I'd like to see, some sort of a timeline with all of the things that we could possibly do. Some things might be further out and they might get pushed, but to capture them so that, we don't just do this and have a couple ideas at the end here. Like I saw a couple ideas I think are really good. It'd be nice to have a roadmap for the future.
I think that's great. I think that's true in all our things that we do here on the council floor. So for
Thank
future
you.
discussion. Thank you, Matt, very much.
Thank
Any
you.
other
Thank you, Matt.
final, I'm not trying to stop the council from asking questions. However.
Just Paul.
She was kicking me under the table.
No, I was not. Thank you, Matt, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Scoutmasters, do you want us to take a little break right here for our young men? Are you okay? Everybody all right? Is it about time? It's about time, right? Yeah, okay. That's okay. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
I could see your eyes glazing over, and I thought, or maybe it was mine. I don't know. What's that? Oh, no.
Yours.
Ours.
Yeah.
Oh, of
absolutely.
course. Come on up, guys. Come on to the dais. It gives us a chance to stand up. I'm sorry, Mr. Shota, we need to take a little one or two. Come on up. Guys, come on up. Oh, yeah, thank you for telling me. This is seventh inning stretch. Rob, we're getting to yours.
Oh, yeah.
And Madam Superintendent of Highways and Parks, it was very nice to have you here. Okay, guys, come on in front, right here.
Thanks for coming, you guys.
Nice.
Excellent. You did a good job. You stayed awake. You even looked like
I want everyone to
you were
tie a knot.
interested, but I'm not so sure, to be honest.
Get in
Okay,
closer.
get ready. This is going to be in the paper. Here we go.
Fit us all?
There you go. Thank
Right.
you, Scoutmasters. Thank
Good
you,
job,
guys.
guys.
Good job. Good
Keep it
job.
going. Keep it going.
Nice job, guys. Thank you.
Get some
Thank you.
rest. Get that
All
in.
right. See you later.
Wyndham, take
Mr. Shota, while you're up, could you turn the heat on, please?
No. Do we have geothermal?
Freezing in here.
Yeah.
You know what it is? The windows, I think. Thank you, everybody, for taking a minute. We appreciate it. Yep, have a
Good
good
luck,
night.
boys.
I want to be at your Eagle Scout ceremonies.
A few years from now.
A couple of years from now.
Got a presentation.
Actually, no, he doesn't.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Mark, I see Rob is ready to roll here.
For the last while. Madam Chair, as you know, the town of Southington, having a population large enough, was asked to form a census committee by the administration. Our Director of Planning and Community Development is our chair of that. A wide range of people from the community are serving on that, mostly the outreach groups, whether it be Janet Mellon or our library and several others. And I think, Madam Chair, you're representing the council on that.
And I can make the meetings.
Rob is going to give us a report. We are about to start the real nuts and bolts of the census. So, Rob.
Thank you. I got the message, obviously, be as quick as possible here. And Mark, thankfully, did 50% of my presentation.
There you go.
All right. So, Census 2020 is upon us. Everybody's very familiar with what the census is, but just a reminder for those who may be actually watching this right now of why it's important that everybody, be counted. And essentially, it's because it determines our number of House of Representatives seats down in Washington, D.C. Also is directly related to our federal funding for schools, roads, emergency services, and more. And of course, the data that you collect through the census data is valuable in many different ways, including our own department, the planning department, because it really does lead to some significant statistical results that we use in a fairly often way. The census this year's census, this census in 2020 is actually going to be the first time they're going to be really focused on using digital means, and basically that's they're going to encourage everybody to use the internet. There's three forms basically that they'll be using to collect the data. Internet's the number one. Paper forms will follow any lack of internet response, and of course phone calls. Now nobody really likes the phone calls. So the encouragement from the census folks is that when you do get the notice to complete your census information online, that's the best way to do it, because you do it once and you're done. No one's going to bother you from that point forward. So just to give everybody the basically the knowledge of the timeline here, actually last week the Census Bureau actually started performing the census in the rural Alaskan village of Tooksuk Bay. So the census is underway out in the outer reaches of our 50th or 49th state. And then in about 6 weeks from now, which is basically from March 12th to March 20th, mid-March, every household will begin receiving the official Census Bureau mail with detailed information on how to respond to it, again by phone, online by phone or by mail. March 30th through April 1st, believe it or not, just 3 days, the Census Bureau will count people who are experiencing homelessness. I don't know how they're going to do it all in 3 days, but apparently that's what their goal is. And they'll be visiting people in shelters, soup kitchens, mobile food vans, on the streets, and outdoor locations such as tent encampments. April 1st is Census Day, and it's observed nationwide. You'll be inundated with census information that day to try to drive the response. And then throughout the month of April, census takers will begin visiting college students who live on campus and people living in senior centers and others who are in large groups of people. The goal is to reach everybody by April 1st, obviously. With no responses, there'll be census takers going out between May and July, visiting homes that haven't had a response yet. To that end, there is actually a drive of their census is hiring about 500,000 people, and fairly good pay for what you're doing. It's over $20 an hour, and you have to be 18 years or older. Obviously, have a Social Security number, but that's available. I think you go through USA Jobs if anybody's interested in doing that. And then by December, by law, the Census Bureau has to deliver the appointment counts to the President and the Congress. And just a quick overview, I did hand out for everybody 2020 Census FAQs. This is actually a great one sheet to answer any questions that somebody may have. You may run into people that are talking about the census, and it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with that, because this really is a saturation campaign, a public outreach saturation campaign. The more we saturate everywhere that people migrate, then the better off this count is going to be. And also there's on the back of that page is the 2020 census and confidentiality. It's important to note that the government basically is not going to they're not going to ask for personal information, they're not going to ask for financial information. And the information that is given, which is the basic information of how many people are living in your household on April 1st, the ages and that data. The staff of the Census Bureau takes a lifetime oath to protect that information. If there's a violation, they can be subject to $250,000 fine or up to 5 years in prison. So that's a pretty hefty detriment to sharing any information that is not supposed to be shared. But again, it's basic information. And to go back to our census count committee, we have about 16 entities on this count committee, myself obviously as the committee lead. We have Michelle from Human Resources, we've got Barbara from the Chamber of Commerce, we've got Teresa from the and Aaron from the tax and tax collector and assessor's office. And we also have Southington Water, Engineering, Sewer, and Health Department. They're all going to be sending out flyers or statements on their billing, which basically should cover quite a few residents in Southington. We have Elaine and Michael from the Registrar's Office. We have Janet from Human Services, Jay and Richard from the Information Technology Department, Christina from Youth Services, Bread for Life / Schools, also helping out with Michelle, with the Board of Ed, Victoria with the Interfaith Outreach, and Christy with the library, and we have Joanne with Early Childhood Collaborative of Southington. It was interesting. One thing I learned is that a notoriously undercounted aspect of the population is those that are non-school age children, which is interesting. And we also have Bob from the Senior Center and John DeMello from the Southington Veterans Group. But they just came on board in the most recent meeting. We've had about three meetings so far, and I'll be following up with everybody and just try to continue to send this message to get the word out. One thing I've been encouraging folks to do is add the census logo in their email signatures, and we have a buzzword that I think Vicki was behind, Southington Counts, that we've adopted, and I have that in my signature as well.
There you go.
And one thing I will add before I forget, the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain has funding that's available for us to use, and one of the ideas floated around was possibly getting a banner that we could hang somewhere in the downtown area to kind of.
Oh, maybe across like what the Apple Harvest does.
I mentioned that.
Or the Italian Festival.
I mentioned
we
that.
got Eversource doesn't let them do it. We can't do that anymore. But on the town hall, we can do it.
Right. So that's that's really it. That's the update in a less than hopefully 5-minute.
Did a great
questions
job.
or
Great
any
job.
ideas?
Yeah, how many people are in Southington?
43,700 something, somewhere in that range, estimated.
It's a city, right?
City of Progress.
Thanks, Rob.
Very good,
All right,
Rob.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam
I'll try
Chair.
to make the next meeting, Rob. I know I've been not very faithful. Oh, okay. I'll make it.
Get everybody.
I know. Yes.
Madam Chair, my last item is we are one of 38 towns in the Capital Region Council of Governments. What they do, and they've done in the past, is that they're asking for a grant from the state whereby they can compile information, whether it be demographic information or information about Southington and the other 37 towns. And their whole goal is to see if they can do shared services. The state of Connecticut, this governor and the previous governor, regionalization and shared services for municipalities is very big on their list. So we feel that we'll get the money for the CROG, and then the CROG will put it together, and we'll see what we have in common with our other 37 neighbors, and hopefully we can do some shared services with that. It doesn't cost the town of Southington any money, but certainly we may be able to save a little money if we can do shared service with some of our other towns. So I'm asking for that resolution to be approved.
Okay, very good. I see it. Very good. Anything else?
That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Taylor.
I think I covered everything when we were talking about the ordinances. That was basically what was going to be on my report tonight, so.
Great, thank you so much.
That's my time.
Very good. All right, let's open up public communication, and anybody has 5 minutes to share things with the council? Anybody?
Yeah, we got it.
Hi, Elio. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Fuscello. OPM. Shared services.
You know, a lot of people left for over 40 years. But that's okay. But because of some new member, I made 1,000 cards to show the truth, but here, the truth don't come. Oh, I forget because usually happen. I went to see your manager times, and he said to me, "You want to make a check? You want me to make a check to you?" I said to him, "I don't need your check. I need what you stole from me." And you did it all, and that because. And then we said, we spoke another time. We said, her father said, "Get up, be happy." I said, my mother said, "Too bad they will fall in a ditch, and you ask for help. But you push them in a ditch. It's a difference." Okay? Now, I want to go back to the history. When I was at the end of 73, Mr. Miller took was a chairman, and you use a lawyer and police to steal. In my case, people immigrant like me, and it happened to you before. I'll tell you what, how that happened. You can see here it's a 2-page. I work hard to feed, that you have the children. You will educate the children.
Pass those down?
Yeah,
We can pass them down so you can speak.
Yeah.
You pass it down, look at this. Oh,
See
I
what I mean?
want to give it to the lady too, but
Oh, yeah, for the record.
I don't know if I have.
You
Because
could have my copy.
he make a,
I'll share with Tom. That's that done.
not many people saw these things. I told you how that you keep a people ignorant and they pay millions of dollars. I pay tax for the school. This I just want to pay the tax. That way you can pay high salary to the manager, to chief police, to anybody else. Now, I know she cannot read it for me, Madame the clerk, because Lasbury said that she do not read anything if you gotta read yourself. I will do. Town attorney Galix state, in regard to zoning violation, you heard about the last meeting. We have several of those matters in course where we are in the process of obtaining injunction. You know what injunction is? Okay. It is a longer process. There they go to court. Now, the zoning enforcement officer, as soon as notified to give by
Registered
mail, or registered mail, it turned it over to me, and I could get the injunction. We will have several more within a couple of weeks. This a lawyer. He's supposed to help the people like me in the town themselves, the councilor. Then down here, if you read,
Wrap it up.
manager was YSL said he did not receive any names. Councilman Amida said a few people have mentioned names. However, I will move that table this side the next meeting. And why nobody has not mention any names? Because before the year before, the police surrounded me up, and he said the town was his property. And then crippled the mind, and I was go down like a dog. That's why you don't see me. I went to the Gina DePaula, rest in peace. I said, they're stealing my property. I remember Beverly, when she was a little girl, started to work over there. And then I keep doing, I said, a council after council.
I know you have.
Nobody ever done anything.
I know.
Now, who run the town? At least don't take my money. You steal. I went a week ago. I paid almost $5,000. Then another fight come in July. And I gotta keep it quiet. Because then here I go. Every time I make a move, I say, I'm above it all.
Elio, did you hear that the bell
I
went off?
understand you, madam. I don't take long. I got my family trouble and everything when I come here. My really care less. I want to teach you how the process works. The other people. The one that put them in jail. Had to go to court. Had the money on my own back to defend my honesty. I guess that those that they are over dishonest.
Oh, we got some other press.
I want to get paid. Madam, I give you the ball. I want to get paid, and I would heck with everything.
Krog.
I just, even in my family, they got mad. You don't listen. I pay the tax. It's not you.
Elio, thank you.
Okay?
We
Put an agenda and do what I have to do. It's a really long overdue, almost 50 years. Did you ever know
Madam Chair, we have some other issues.
Yes, son.
Thank you.
Maybe point of
Use
order.
the law, yeah?
Probably move
And the
on.
police.
I
They
know.
keep people down, like me.
Thank you, Elio.
Please, do what I have to do. Women agenda. I want to get paid.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Is there
I'm not
anyone-
asking for handout or nobody. He made a
Okay.
very wise remark. And
Is-
he knew a long time ago.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council? Mr. Fucillo, don't forget your flag. Is there anybody else? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public communications a portion of our agenda. Old business?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the Board of Finance minutes with the corrections as identified on page 5 with the $8,400 correction that Councilwoman DiPaolo identified, and on page 6, just some clarification in the wording under the wellness program that the town manager outlined.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Action on the Croc grant that the town manager outlined.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We now need to schedule a public hearing on the traffic block ordinance.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for the traffic block ordinance on February 10th at 7 p.m.
I'll second.
And Attorney Taylor, that should give us enough time, I would assume, to have the ordinance committee meet, and then we'll have the,
Yeah, that should be sufficient time.
okay.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Can I just make a request
Yes.
for that public hearing that we scheduled, that there's a visual of some sort for the public to see exactly what,
They look like, yeah.
so that, because
good
it can
idea.
get confusing, the
I think
words of
that's
an
a great
ordinance.
idea, yeah. Mr. Town Manager, would you make
Yeah,
sure that they know that?
Mr. Officer Snyder, who's in charge of the traffic, could certainly get one to the town attorney.
That would be terrific, thank you. So we have a motion and a second right now. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. New business, tax refunds, I believe, Councilwoman DiPaolo?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve the tax refunds as outlined in our packet.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I would like a motion, adjournment and into executive session barring the press and public.
I'll make
but-
that motion.
But inviting the fire commission and the fire chiefs.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second?
So I see a second.
Can I clarify?
Yes.
It's for personnel matters, which the fire department will be on, and then real estate matters, which just the town attorney and town manager will be at with the council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Town Manager. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. We are going into executive session. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a good night.
Executive session.